All right, so welcome to Money Mastery. This is class number 3, okay? I want to do 2 things today. First thing I want to do is I have, Harold's got a mic here, so I want to be able to give you an opportunity so we can interact a little bit on how things have been going so far, and then I'll go into what we need to get to cover today, which is going to be about emergency funds and getting your debt paid off and that kind of stuff. So if you have any comments or questions up to this point, go ahead and raise your hand, and we can go ahead and bring you the mic. And if no, then this will be a very short part of the segment. And we'll just go cut, and we'll start again. Nobody has any comments or questions? I mean, I'm just curious how you've been doing with this. Any struggles? Everybody's doing okay? Making your ledger, getting your sense of what your bills really are about and what your income's really about, and okay. All right, well, good. All right, so let's talk about for today. So remember, we were going through these steps here. And in step 1, we were accurately identifying our state of our finances. In step 2, we were going to make spending and income adjustments. And in step 3 now, and we talked about this a little bit last time, we're going to talk about the emergency fund and the debt elimination and even planning for large purchases. Okay, so this is not something that I want you to go running forward in until you get things in the right order. Order number 1 is to accurately identify where you're starting. Now, order number 2 is to make the adjustments, and especially if you found out in your step 1 that you are bleeding financially, okay? If you have a negative, and that's why they make it red. All right, if you do negative numbers on the computer, a lot of times they'll make it in red, or they'll say that you're in the red as opposed to being in the black, okay? So if your finances are in the red, your first priority is to get them in the black. Okay? That means before emergency funds, before debt, et cetera, okay, get your stuff into the black. Okay? Now, and the reason you don't do the debt thing or any of the other things first is because clearly how are you going to do that if you're not even able to make bills and things are just getting worse? So we got to get you sort of triaged to the point where we can bandage you up and get you stable. Okay, so that's number 1, which means you're going to do the income adjustments and the spending adjustments, all right? So now, the next step is going to be the emergency fund. Before you start paying off your debt, okay, I know the debt thing is a big deal, but you know what? If you don't make an emergency fund of at least about $1,000 first, as you start to pay off the debt, something's going to go wrong, and then you're going to increase your debt, and then something's going to go wrong, and you're going to increase your debt, okay? And that's just a tendency. And what's more important, and we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, is that your psychological and emotional state of being excited and motivated is going to get completely derailed. Because you'll get frustrated because you feel like you're making progress, and then all of a sudden it's going to go the other way. All right? So the emergency fund is a cushion not only for your finances, but also for, believe it or not, for your emotions. Okay? Because after all, if something goes wrong and it's under that $1,000, you go ahead and fix it. And then you go ahead and work towards replenishing that $1,000 when you get a chance. But at least you have the emergency fund there to fix some things, okay? All right, so just for clarification, because we didn't really cover this last time, just for clarification, your budget is supposed to spend every dollar, okay? Every dollar you have, you need to allocate it to pay bills and everything else. That doesn't mean that if you have extra money, make sure to go spend it. We're going to allocate it into things like your emergency fund. Okay? So if you do get to the point where you've stabilized your, not if, when. Okay, when you get to the point where you've stabilized, you have now stabilized your finances, and you look at your budget for that month, and you realize, I have an extra $50 at the end of this month that I don't need in all the other allocations that I have. That doesn't mean go out and party and spend the money. It means now you're going to start using it for the 3 things we're going to talk about today. Emergency funds, large purchases that will happen in your future, and debt elimination, okay? So you'll make a line item in your budget for one of those things, all right? And this is where we're going to, again, pre-spending the money, okay? Be as tight budgeted as you can. Hopefully at some point you'll be able to have a little bit of excess, and then that excess will start to fix these other things, okay? Now, because bear in mind, as you're going through this, you know, but you don't not like to normally think about it, you know that you're gonna probably need to get new brakes at some point. Or you know that your washer or dryer is on its last legs, but it'll probably get you another 6 months to a year. Or you know, whatever it is that you know that's gonna be what we call large purchase. I don't know, a couple of $100 to $1,000, $400, $500, $600, that's a big purchase. So we're not talking about you need a big screen TV, although that won't even cost as much as that anymore, okay? But we're talking about the things that tend to break, fall apart, wear out, and you're gonna have to buy tires. Oh my gosh, tires cost ridiculous amounts of money now, okay? I mean, it used to be you could put 4 tires on your car for $200, not a problem. Now you get 1 tire, almost $200 put on your car. Of course, I was a brilliant teenager going into my early 20s, so I bought a Mustang with the big special, tires, which ended up costing $250 a tire in 1985 or so. So I was spending $1,000 to put tires on my car back then. Okay, but things like tires, oil changes, brakes, for car type of stuff, even the fact that you might need a new car. Maybe you got a car that only is going to last so long, okay? Furniture, any kind of thing that is a big expense that is definitely coming, because it's when it shows up and you didn't prepare for it that it causes the trauma financially in your life, the emotional and the financial trauma. Okay, so step number 1 in all of this, okay? We're assuming that you've now got your budget going. We're assuming that you've stopped the bleeding. Now, the next thing you're gonna do is try to put aside enough money to get that emergency fund up to about $1,000. Okay, lots of financial people out there use that number because generally speaking, most things that can go wrong can be handled by that. Okay, not everything, but most things. Okay, most major appliances, most car problems could be handled by $1,000. Okay, so let's get that put aside. Now, if something does happen, your goal then will be to, as soon as you can, replenish whatever you spend out of it. Okay? But let's say you get your $1,000 fund put together. Okay, now this is we'll call it phase 1 emergency fund. In phase 2, which will be much later, after you've got your debt being paid off and other things, we're gonna build the emergency up to about 3 months worth of funds. Then hopefully after that up to about 6 months. So phase 2, about 3 months. Phase 3, at least 6 months of expenses. Why? Because life happens. You can lose a job. You can lose some sort of situation lays you up health-wise, something, and you're out of work, and you now have money to spend on your bills. So now that you have a budget, guess what you know? You know how much it costs to live. You know what your expenses are. You know what you need to make. So if it's whatever that number is, you need to first have 1, then 2, then 3 months worth of that put on the side, okay? And so that allows for you to have that safety net, because part of what we're wanting to make sure to do is protect you, your assets, your future, et cetera, in one of the later steps. So the emergency fund helps to do that, okay? Now, phase 1, we're just looking for that $1,000. Phase 2, we're looking to get up to about 3 months worth of expenses. So you start off trying to get 1 month's worth of expenses, and the second, and the third. And you can put that in a separate bank account that's just for your emergency fund so that you don't spend it on anything by accident or whatever you do. Most people don't use a savings account. They use checking accounts. So take your money that you would, most banks would love for you to have a savings account. Fine, use that for your emergency fund. I mean, it's not something you're gonna spend very often. Just go ahead and stick it in the emergency fund. You can always transfer it into your checking account if you need to spend it on something. But at least it's in a separate account where you're not going to, mess with it. Now, I know a savings account is gonna earn you a whole lot, but that's not your point of moving it over there. The point of moving it over there is that it's not going to be something you might accidentally spend, okay? Now, okay, so phase 1, $1,000, phase 2, 3 months, phase 3, 6 months. That's our goal. But here's this order. You're gonna get the phase 1 $1,000 first, then you're gonna start the next thing. Don't worry about the 3 months and 6 months at this point. We're only doing phase 1. Then your next step is to work on debt elimination, okay? Debt elimination, all right? And part of that debt elimination is that you are planning for the large purchases, because guess what? As you're eliminating the debt, the large purchase shows up, your temptation will be to go back and increase your debt again, all right? So make sure that you are adding to the budget in this whole process, planning ahead, knowing something is coming. Try to think ahead. Okay, what do I have that I am using that's going to wear out, break down, or need to be replaced that's more than just a few dollars? I mean, sure, you got light bulbs that might go out, but they're cheap. We're talking about bigger things like the dishwasher, the washer dryer, the car, the refrigerator, something that is on its kind of last legs. It's okay right now, but it could go at any moment. And rather than planning to deplete your emergency fund, why don't we start planning to put a few dollars away so you just buy a new one when you need it? Okay? Because after all, we do this with cars, right? We buy a car on payments, and those payments have interest. What if you instead started putting payments aside for the car in advance and then buy the car when you've saved enough payments, instead of buying the car first and then making the payments? Excuse me. So if you have, for example, in your budget, a car payment that you're making now, all right? And then you finally pay off the car as part of your debt elimination, well, keep making those car payments towards the next thing. Put them towards the appliance or maybe the next car. Maybe you were paying off a car and now the car, by the time you paid it off, is already 5 years old. And it's already having problems. It took you that long to pay it off. Well, keep making the car payments, but not to the company, but to yourself, and put them aside towards the purchase of a car. Okay? After all, you've already had your budget working with that payment, so keep doing it. Okay? Okay, and let me kind of stop here because it just triggered a thought for me, so you can put this in. Because all of you are looking at this class from the point of view of Torah observance, right? I think all of you should, if you, how do I want to explain this? Okay, first let's make sure you're getting your tithing up to speed, okay? Okay, well, this part of the discussion is going to be about tithing. So your first goal is to actually get to where you're tithing correctly. Your first tithe on everything that you have coming in, and your second tithe is put aside for your feast. I know that all of you can't do that at this point, but that's our goal. Let's get to that place, right? And then, of course, the third tithe comes up on the third and sixth year in the cycle. Okay, my encouragement's going to be that when, again, this is not for right this second, but because the thought came to my head, I want to just mention it out there so I don't forget, okay? What I recommend is that when you get to that third tithe year and you get through that first third tithe year and you actually figure out how to do it, keep doing it. Just take the third tithe now and put it towards one of your other needed funds. Okay, you're not using it for benevolence, it's not part of your third tithe, but you lived without it for a whole year. So now use that. Some of the best works out there for wealth development, some of the books that are out there, all talk about paying yourself first, and guess what number they tell you to use? 10%. Okay, there are some really good books out there. The Richest Man in Babylon and some of these other books. Don't just get afraid because the word Babylon's in there. But it's a book on financial philosophy and wisdom. But the thing is, they all talk about, the wealthy people talk about how they paid themselves an amount of money that was for future, for investment, for building their business ideas, for whatever it was that they were doing to get wealthy. All right? So if you can already get comfortable living on 3 tithes, and without the 3 tithes is what I'm saying, living without that, well, guess what? In the next year, keep doing that, but take that third 10% and use it towards the investments, the future, and the other things that you need to do, okay? You want to make a comment?
This is my second time doing a third tithe. I don't miss the extra 10%. I've always tithed because I found I hurt myself when I don't. So I think that attributes to some of my continued success, besides doing good work, is I make sure I take care of Abba first. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah. When I first met Steve, and Steve's a general contractor, Steve does a lot of home improvement work and all those kind of things. He started doing the tithing, and then when he got to that first third tithe there, he was contacting me going, Rabbi, I don't understand what's going on. I can't believe how much business I'm doing in a year when I'm giving more, and this is like the best months I've ever had, and this is the way Yahweh, designed it to be. He says, test me, prove me in the tithe, and see if I don't pour out a blessing that cannot be contained, overflowing, shaken, pressed down, and the whole works. So this is not a health, wealth, prosperity gospel. This is what he just says. It's the system that he put into place. Even secular people see this work. A lot of the wealthiest people, even in the secular way, understand giving away 10%, okay? And then keeping 10% for yourself to do the investing going forward. But they all talk about giving away 10%. That's been one of their, quote, secrets to their success is giving away, taking care of other people. And so Yahweh says, well, this is the way we do it. We have the tithe system, and the tithe system takes care of the ministry, it takes care of the poor, it takes care of you for feasts. So it really takes care of everybody. All right? But I'm just telling you that this is one of those things where if you already have in your budget something that you're spending or putting on, okay, and you're living okay within your means with that there, and all of a sudden that item is no longer necessary, you've paid it off, then make sure you're now using that amount of money to continue to be useful in either paying something else off or being put towards something that will bring you the availability of your 3 to 6 months emergency fund, or the ability to pay for a large purchase coming up in the future, or some investment for your retirement, or whatever it is. Just continue. Don't all of a sudden say, this is now money I can spend. Don't turn it into spending, okay? Because that would be a mistake and derail your growth going forward. All right, so I just wanted to throw that out there because some of you are in the tithing system, and first goal, of course, is you want to get right with him and get to the point where you can actually do it, and that's part of your budget. You will get there. The second thing, of course, is that once you are doing something like the third tithe, which doesn't happen every year, I would recommend that you do it every year, but the third, only on the 2 times that you're supposed to, the 3rd year, the 6th year, and the 7-year cycle, that's when you would give that in. The other years, you would just take that and put it towards something else because you're used to living without it. Why now start living with it? And see, that's what people go in the cycle. They're like, wow, I'm living on only 2 tithes. Now I got to be a 3rd tithe. And then, oh, well, I'm back to the 2 tithes. Now I'm back to why not just keep it 3 all the time and then you'll be fine. Then it doesn't all of a sudden become an emotional challenge when you head towards that 3rd tithe. I wonder if I'm going to be okay. Well, you've been okay because you've been doing it the whole time. Make sense? Okay, I just want to throw that out there. Okay, so now let's deal with the big gorilla in the room, which is the debt problem, okay? The debt problem. All right, I've got 2 philosophies or 2 approaches that I'm going to give you, okay? First of all, there's the most common one that a lot of people like to do. We call it the debt snowball. Dave Ramsey talks about this. It's the idea of paying off your smallest debt first and then rolling forward what you were paying towards the small one, towards the next bigger one, and the next bigger one. So if your smallest one, was, just $300, and so you try to get that one paid off, it gives you a sense of success, it makes you feel good, and then you start paying off the one that was $1,000 and the next one that was bigger than that or whatever, in that order. Nothing wrong with this process. And it works really well, and a lot of people find that this is the best way to go because emotionally, a lot of us need that sense of accomplishment. And when you pay off the small one, you feel like, that's one down, got it done, okay? Okay, now, I'm going to give you a second philosophy. You're still going to try to pay them all down, but we're going to do it in the order of the one that's causing the most bleeding. Okay, so now you're going to look at the interest rates, and you're going to pay off the one with the highest rate first. It may be the smallest one, it may be the biggest one. It doesn't matter. It's the one that's costing you the most money. The debt snowball will not pay off the debt at the end and have you have paid off. If you look at the amount of money that you owe, by the time you pay it off, you will have paid off more doing it the smallest one to the biggest one as opposed to doing the biggest interest rate first. That'll actually save you money. But if you emotionally are overwhelmed trying to pay off a bigger one because that's where the high rate is, do it the other way. In other words, it will cost you a little more, but at least you'll get it done. It'll cost you a lot more if you don't get anything done, okay? Now, if you're married or if you're working with your, with your spouse in this type of thing, look, don't overly push one way or the other as long as it's the way that you at least will get it done, okay? Because I know you guys had that challenge, right? Okay, but as long as you could get it done, all right? That's the important thing. Now, it also depends on who's paying the bills, all right? The one who's paying the bills, the one who's responsible to pay the bills, I would tend to lean on letting them have it their way because they're the ones that's trying to get it done, keeping track of it, and they're the ones that are making sure it gets done, all right? So if the husband's paying the bills and he wants to do the highest interest rate first or he wants to do the smallest one first, fine. If the wife's paying the bills, it does. Either way, the point is that you will get it done either way. One will just end up costing you a little bit more than the other. Not necessarily a significant amount more, but it will cost you more. So like my philosophy is to pay off the highest interest rate first. It's the one that's costing me the most. Okay? But if you're the type of person that you need to feel because you've been struggling in life, and a lot of us do, that sense of success, Wow, I've got 5 debts and now I have only 4. And then I have 3. I feel like I'm getting somewhere. This is the one that a lot of these guys really push because there's a lot to be said for the sense of accomplishment, okay? So I care very little which one you pick. In other words, just because I would pick one doesn't mean it's the right one for you. You need to just pick one and go after it aggressively, okay? Because if you're going to do the one that's smallest, then aggressively pay off the smallest one, and then now take all of your funds towards the second one, and then the third one as you really go after these things. All right? Same thing with the interest rate. If you're going to go after the one with the highest rate, go after it aggressively. Get that thing out of the way. Get the sense of success. Okay? If you're selling the spouse on doing it the higher interest rate way, well, then get it done quickly so she'll still get the sense of accomplishment and say, okay, look, we got this done. All right? Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. Now, bear in mind, if you've got 2 or 3 that are relatively small and one just has the higher rate, but it may be a little bit bigger, we're not talking about like that. I mean, if there's a difference of like $50 to $100 between the debts, go after the one with the higher interest rate or not. It's not going to make a whole lot of difference. Just get them paid off, okay? Get them paid off. But it becomes more challenging when your biggest one, which may be, say, $2,000 or $3,000, whatever it is, or maybe for some of you, $8,000 or $10,000, and that's at the highest rate. Well, it could take a while to pay that one off. So it's going to be a while before you really feel like you've gotten somewhere. So you might want to go after the one that's a couple of $100s first, okay? Now, we're talking about going after cards first. Your car and your house are going to come last, okay? Let's go after the cards first. MasterCard, Visa, American Express, Discover, whatever. Okay, let's get the cards paid off, and especially if it's like a store card. Get rid of those things, all right? I don't have a problem with plastic. I know there are guys out there that think nobody should ever use plastic. I spend everything on my plastic, but I only have one, and I pay it off every month. It's an American Express. And American Express, if I want to carry interest, they're very happy to charge me 23% or 21%. Well, I'm not going to do that. So I'm very careful that I know what I'm spending, so I know I'm going to pay it every month. But I like that it gets me some benefits, like if something breaks or gets stolen, they'll replace it, or with all the purchases, I get miles, which eventually can help me with travel. Okay? And so for me, that's what works. For you, you may realize, I'm addicted. I better not have the plastic. Let me just stick with cash. Paper hurts more when you spend it. So try to get away from the plastic. And if you are going to use plastic, let it be just one, and let it be one that you are absolutely keeping track of, like a checkbook, right? I don't even think anybody does this anymore. We used to have a checkbook with the ledger in it, and you would track your checking, right? And you would you know how much was in the account, and every time you wrote a check, you minused it out, okay? But do that with your credit card. Make sure that you're only spending what you budgeted in that area if you're using a credit card. And only use it knowing you're paying it off in full that month. So you're only using it for the convenience of not having to carry around paper, not because you need the convenience of buying 30 days, okay? I think you should get in the habit of paying your bill when it shows up. Don't look at the due date. Just pay the bill. Get in the habit of that way, it's gone, it's done, there's no late fees, there's no problems, and you're not thinking emotionally on the float that you might get for 30 days. Because if you're thinking that way, that's a trap. That's a dangerous trap, all right? I get bills, I pay them the minute they show up, or the next day, depending on, as soon as I can get them paid. So that way I don't have to worry about it. As many as I can, I put on auto pay. Then I don't have to even worry about losing the bills, forgetting about them, or anything else. And they just automatically get paid, okay? And so that's going to keep you out of trouble. All right, so you need to know where your debt is. You need to know how much you've got. You need to know what it is, and start planning. Write them all out, list them all out, write down the interest rates, write down the balances due, and then decide which process you're going to try. And whichever one it is, put all your effort in there. Just really focus on getting that paid off. That is for every excess penny you have until you get that paid off. That's where it all goes. Emergency fund first, then getting that debt paid, okay? The large purchases in the future, you don't need to be putting aside for that until you get the debt paid, because that's just draining, your funds and everything else. Okay, let's get the bleeding and the thing that's taking money out of your pocket paid for, done, settled. Okay? Then ultimately after that, you could pay off the car, and then even you could pay off the house. But these things are to be done in all of the research and all of the years of people teaching these classes. That's the order they do it in. Okay? Pay off everything but the car and then the house. Okay, and in that order. Now, it'd be great when you pay it all off, then you're completely debt-free. It'd be nice when you own your house free and clear. And don't listen to any of those ads that tell you how much you can live life based on your house. Don't take the money out of your house. Okay, it's not a debit machine or a cash machine to go up. It's not an ATM. Okay, that's just foolish thinking. Do not do that. All right, so we're going to get out of the debt. We're going to do it one of these methods. We're going to get the emergency fund put away. We're going to start eventually planning for the large purchases and expenditures. One of the things that you probably want to do that most people don't know that they can do is you can contact the 3 major credit reporting agencies and ask them for a free copy of your report. Then you may find out that there's some things in the report that are not correct, okay? Or find out some outstanding things that are correct that you forgot about that are there. Okay, that's an important thing to do. All the agencies will give you your report once a year for free. That's law now. It didn't used to be, okay? It used to be that you could request a free one if you got turned down for credit based on the report. And so if you got turned down and you got a letter that said, we declined you for your credit, and part of that reason was because of this report that we got from, TransUnion, Experian, whoever it was, okay, well then, you would be allowed to get a copy report. Now you're allowed to get one once a year for free. You can go to any of their websites and whatever, or you can go to one of those apps that people have that kind of like Credit Karma and all these other things that tells you where your credit's at. But through the app, you could probably get a copy of your free report once a year. So it'd be good to know where you stand on these things, all right? So you can go ahead and request that from the 3 major agencies. All right? If you don't know how to figure that out or how to contact, just look it up. Just look on Google, you'll find the 3 agencies and you'll be able to find what you need, okay? I would name the 3 for you, but I think 1 or 2 of them has changed names over the years, and I don't remember them necessarily by their current names. You had TRW, but I think that's now Experian, and I think then you had TransUnion and Equifax, or I don't know what they did. Okay, but those are your big agencies. But just look it up. There are 3 major ones that they use, that the world uses, at least in your life, okay? Okay, that's something that you may want to do. And then you'll see all of the stuff that's been accumulating, and some of it may be right, some of it may be wrong, and if it's wrong, you can actually always file for them to check and verify that there's some errors on your report, okay? I mean, I'm convinced actually that my uncle is one of the reasons why you can get a free report, because he had somebody else with a similar enough name or a similar enough something that their stuff kept ending up on his report, and he took them to court, and they said that they would give him, because they kept saying they fixed it, and then it wasn't fixed. They kept saying they fixed it, and it wasn't fixed. So he sued them, and to settle it, he was to get a free report every year for the rest of his life, to verify that they fixed it. And I think that was the kind of suit that eventually made the agencies and the lawmakers realize everybody probably needs to get one of these, And so you can now get one free. All right, any questions about that up to this point? I mean, this is not rocket science and complicated stuff. I mean, if I was doing this the way some of the other guys do, you'd be getting all these heart-wrenching and exciting emotional stories on a video and all that. You got your own stories. You got a question?
If you use your money to pay off all of your incoming credit card bills every month, and then it bounces back and says you have this much to use. You know what I'm saying? Available credit, yeah. Mm-hmm. I've been doing that for quite some time, but that's really pretty stupid, is not to buy anything with the money that I'm using, but to use that credit. What's the danger in that? I know there's a danger.
It's not so much available credit. I mean, they're just telling you that's how much you can spend. Your card has a limit.
And that's what I use each month to buy gas and blah, blah, blah.
Well,
and blah,
basically,
blah,
you're just using your card to buy things, but just make sure that that money that you're spending is already allocated in your budget to use for gas and things, knowing you're going to pay that card when the bill comes. Okay?
Yeah, so it's not really that bad. Huh?
No, you can use a card. I'm just telling you it's something that you have to be careful with because some of you have emotional challenges with the card. I mean, I don't want to be one of those guys out there that says, all cards are evil and don't use cards. All right? They have their benefits and they have their uses and they have their advantages. The problem is not the card. Look, it's like a lot of things in life. The item itself isn't the problem. It's the person who is actually utilizing the item that's the problem. Okay, we have that whole thing with guns in this country, and we could talk about with cars, because more people get killed with cars than get killed with guns. But yet, no problem getting a license and getting to own a car. I mean, it's the driver, the owner, the practitioner, the person utilizing the thing that generally has the issue. That's the same thing with plastic, okay? You have credit cards, you have debit cards. You must know, if you have a budget for your gas for the month, and let's say, just to make a round number, let's say your gas budget is $100. Well, then you need to know every time you go and use that card to buy gas, mark that down somewhere so you know that you spent more than your $100. Okay? Because when that bill comes, you've allocated $100 to pay that. And if that bill is more and you haven't allocated, now your budget is a little bit out of whack. So I don't care if you write checks, if you use cash, or if you use plastic, you just need to be tracking. So that's why every day you should be coming home and writing in your ledger what you spent and seeing where that puts you with the categories of spending. Because you're not going to have a line item in your budget for everything you do. You're going to have them in categories. This goes under travel or gas. So you have gas. Maybe you have an automobile one. Okay, so it's my insurance, it's my gas, it's maintenance like oil changes. Maybe you have one. I don't know how much you want to break down your items. Break them down as much as you want. But make sure that you are in your ledger saying, okay, I got gas that comes out of this item. Let me make sure I've subtracted that for the month out of that item's budget. This is why people use and have used in the past the envelope system. You take cash and you put it in envelopes, and each envelope is labeled with the item on the budget. It's my food envelope, my clothing envelope, my automobile or gas envelope, right? My rent envelope, whatever it is. And then you put the money in the envelope, and then you only can spend what's in the envelope. And you don't get to take money out of any other envelope to do something that envelope isn't designed for. Not a bad way to go, okay? It works very well. It also means you have a lot of cash laying around. Not always smart, okay? My parents got robbed at one point back in the 70s, and they were using the envelope system, and the envelopes got emptied, okay? That happens. Not often, so I'm not saying that, but the more problem is that you'll grab an envelope and take out of it even though it's not for the item that the envelope says. Because you need to write in big letters on each envelope what it's for. And do not stick your hand in there to pull money out for anything else but what it says on the envelope. Same thing, though, if you're using checks or credit cards. You should know where you're spending and is that in your budget. Okay? Very important that you don't. Now, if you need to spend on something that's not budgeted correctly in your budget, then you need to make a decision where you're going to take it from. Be willing to give up from one place because you're going to need it in someplace else. Well, I need extra here for some reason, so I'm willing to have less over there. You can't just spend more over here and the same over there. There has to be a trade-off or exchange. All right? Okay, anybody else? Okay, bring it over to Betty. Where's the mic?
Should we be concerned about our credit rating? I know a lot of times when you go to buy a car or a house, when they run your credit, they decide your interest rate for those things on what your credit rating is. Is that something we should be concerned with?
Okay, so there's, again, this is one of those things that has a debated status amongst the teachers of finance, okay? There are those out there that say if you're going to budget for and put money aside, you don't ever need a credit rating. If you buy things for cash, there's no credit needed. If you're not going to use credit, in other words. If you're going to put aside car payments to the point where then you buy the car, you don't need a credit rating to buy the car. If you put enough money aside to buy the house, you don't need a credit rating to buy the house. Now, I don't know that most people will make the effort and have the patience to do that, okay? And so therefore, in the world we live in, the credit rating does come into play with very large purchases. When you go to buy a lot of furniture, or you buy a car or a house or whatever, these big purchases, and you're going to buy them on credit, which again, the main point would be to minimize the amount of things you buy on credit. In other words, don't do it. If you can't afford to buy it now, unless you absolutely need it now, but instead of just wanting it now, then put aside money to buy it later. Our biggest problem emotionally is that we are not really good about deferred gratification or delayed gratification. We want it now. We live in the now society world, right? And we've been that way for quite a long time. Ever since they started the whole idea of using credit cards and all that stuff, we've instant gratification. You can have whatever you want, you can have it now, okay? Of course, that leads to all the problems that you have and why you're in this class, right? So, no, I would not worry about the credit rating from that point of view. But if you want to make a large purchase like a home, and you're going to pay that off over time, your credit rating will make a difference. Of course, if you put enough money down, it really won't, but it will make a difference. And so I would say no, I would not be concerned with your credit rating initially, because your credit rating may get a little screwed up as you're prioritizing and trying to get all things settled and paid off. Although that rating will change and improve very quickly once your debts are paid off and you show consistent ability to pay, okay? I have had a bankruptcy in my past. Actually, I've had two, to be honest. Mostly business related. Actually, both business related. But the point is, they still end up being bankruptcies that went against me. But I can tell you now that my rating is probably around 800. After going through the whole process and paying off the bankruptcies and all the other things that had to be done. Now, it took time, but if you consistently do the things that the credit rating companies give you credit for as being a good score, you will get it right back up quickly. I wouldn't worry about it so much while you're trying to fix the problem, okay? Because you may have ones that are falling behind and everything else while you're trying to get this all done. Okay, well, that's okay. Credit ratings are fixable, even from bankruptcy, okay? So just so you know that, all right? And by the way, mine, in case anybody's watching is wondering about me, those are a long, long time ago, okay? Over 20 years ago. Long time ago. But again, they were, like I said, they were business related. All right, made some business decisions, trying to start businesses. And for all of you out there who want to start a business, you have to understand there's a reason why the statistics tell you that 90% of them fail in the first, 80% in the first, 4 out of 5 in the first year, and then another 4 out of 5 of those in the next 5 years. So 80% the first year, another 80% of that last 20% in the next 5 years. And usually it's because of one thing. They didn't budget right for the finances. They ran out of money before it could actually make it, okay? And so, these things happen. But I want you to understand that they are recoverable, and your rating can go up quite substantially, okay? But we are not going to be all obsessed with things like, well, if I do this, if you pay everything off, the credit card companies don't like that. It's actually negative to your rating to some degree. They like you. I'm not saying just pay it off. If you pay it off and start canceling your cards and cutting them all up, they look at that as a negative. So it's a weird industry. Okay, it's a weird industry. Okay, but because I spend everything on my one card and pay it off every month, they like that. Okay, and so that works for that, and so my rating stays whatever it needs to be. So hopefully that makes sense. The main point being, let's try to not do things on credit. Only possibly the house. Everything else should not. Okay? You can do certain games. It's like playing roulette, once you get to the point where you are sort of financially sound, like the person who says, well, we're running a no interest until 2021 or whatever on this furniture or whatever. Well, you could do something like that to get whatever you're getting, but you better have it in your budget to pay it off before that thing jumps to whatever it is. Okay? The main reason, they'll go back and charge you from the beginning if you don't pay it off. The main reason that the housing crash happened, I'm not going to point fingers and say, well, was there predatory lending? No, the main reason is, and I'm going to blame the buyers, because the buyers, I don't care what the predatory lenders are. Nobody came over your house and made you put a pen in your hand and forced you to sign anything. It's because they were doing these subprime loans that were going to balloon in 3 to 5 years, and the person never sat there and acknowledged the reality of their head that there was no way, based on their current budgeting, income, and everything else, that they could afford that house's payment at full payment. And so 5 years came around, and we had a lot of houses that were upside down because the person had when you know that you can afford a $150,000 house and you buy a $400,000 house just because someone's willing to lend it to you, you are creating the problem for yourself because you bought into, it's like the person buying into the scams all these scams that are out there, all the get-rich-quick scams, all the, send me whatever little thing and I'm going to send you my millions from Nigeria, whatever. I mean, the scams out there if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. And so while you're giggling in your $500,000, $400,000 house and thinking, wow, I can't believe this, you had to know whether you could actually afford that when it actually blew up. Look, I bought a house in 1998 or 99. Something like that, 99, 2000, right in that range. And it was back when you didn't have to produce before this is what caused all the problem. I didn't have to show them any income verification. I didn't have to show them anything. Now, I ended up paying for the house, and we ended up selling the house, and everything was fine after I moved out of it. But I'm just saying is, they had no business giving me this house. But I knew I could handle the house. You see, I bought it knowing I could do it. Just because the bank was willing to give it to me without any proof on their part that I could do it, I thought that was foolish on their part. I thought it was crazy. Because I had to basically prove nothing. As far as they were concerned, whatever I claimed to be doing, they just believed it. I could have said anything. Now, as a financially responsible person, I knew I wasn't biting off more than I could chew. Okay? So, and as it is, that's when our ministry ended up stopping, what we had back in those days around 2003. So I guess I had the house for a year, from 2002 to 2003. It was a little earlier than that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We sold the house a year after we bought it. It happened to be in a subdivision that was just about closing out, which, as far as being full, which means that prices were still going up on the houses. So we got basically enough to pay the realtors, and we got out of the house. But the point is, I could make the payments and be able to sell the house, and everything was fine. But how many people out there get sucked in to these deals? Well, buy all this furniture now and pay nothing for 3 years. Yeah, but are you going to remember? Are you ever going to pay it off? And then what happens when you get to 3 years? And how many of these deals can you do? And now you've accumulated so much debt because, wow, I got the appliances and I got furniture and I got all this other stuff, all this great stuff. Well, you got to pay for it at some point. Better you should not play the Russian roulette game. Okay, just spinning that thing and pulling the trigger. Because that's what you're doing with your finances when you take these great so-called deals. All right? Oh, but this card's going to give me no interest until June, or no interest till next September, or no interest. So then you fill up the card, guess what? Eventually you get to June, and then the interest starts coming in. It's a trap. Please don't fall for the traps. Budget for things, buy them when you have the money. It's very simple. This is what everybody used to do before they invented these hideous things called credit cards. I mean, absolutely. And if you have a debit card, treat your debit card like a checking book, like a checkbook. You use your debit card, have a debit card book that has your bank account amount on it and where you minus off money like you did with your checkbook. Have a debit card book. They're easy to go get. You can go pick them up probably anywhere like you pick up a checkbook. Just go in like in any of the office type stores, you pick up a checkbook, a check ledger, but use it for your debit card. I know I've got, $1,500 in my checking account, and I just went and bought food. That's $115. So go ahead and minus that off, whatever it is, okay? Because a debit card's like writing a check, it's like using cash. That's fine. It's the credit cards that are really the challenge, all right? And don't get that overdraft stuff either. You should never let yourself get that close. Because what you'll do is you'll do what you do knowing the overdraft will kick in. And so now you've enabled yourself to go over the line. Because emotionally, you're not afraid of going over the line anymore. Okay? And then you stay over the line, and now you're paying interest on that. Don't do that. This is foolishness. This is not the wisdom that you need, okay? All right. So again, that's all we're really going to have for today. Okay? I want you to take the budget, be very disciplined with your budget. Any excess money in the budget, once the bleeding has stopped, is going to go towards the $1,000 emergency fund. Once that $1,000 emergency fund is established, all excess money is now going to go towards debt repayment. Do one of the two methods. Pay off the highest interest rate first, or pay off the smallest amount first, the smallest debt, the one that's the smallest number. Okay? And then just keep consistently rolling it through and paying it off. All right? And then, of course, make the time immediately, like tonight or whenever you get the chance, to start thinking about large purchases that are coming. So you can start planning for them. Okay, none of those things should sneak up on you. Because I promise you, those things will break and fall apart at an inconvenient moment if you haven't thought about it. And will wreck your, especially this time of year, absolutely know that Murphy's favorite thing to do is go ahead and spend your tax refund. That's Murphy's favorite little game. Wow, I'm going to be getting $1,500 in a tax refund. Guess what's going to break? $1,500 worth of stuff because you didn't plan for it. And Murphy just loves to do that. And whatever you plan to do with that $1,500, you can forget it. Okay? Don't let Murphy play with your stuff. In other words, if you budget and plan for things, it takes it out of his hands. Because then when it happens, you're not surprised. It doesn't mess anything up. But that's kind of one of those things that we face this time of year. Everybody's all excited about the refund they're getting. Okay, don't buy toys, don't splurge, don't use it for vacations or all that other stuff. Get your stuff fixed first. Because whatever joy you get out of the thing, it will not overcome the amount of stress, anxiety, etc. that you will have at the same time because you didn't address the problem. Instead, you went out and played. Okay? It's like we teach our children, right? Do your schoolwork first, take care of your room, whatever it is, then you can go play. That's what we should be doing anyway. Some of us don't do a good job with that. All right? My parents always told me that, right? Didn't your parents tell you that? Do your work first, then you can play. You know, Dave Ramsey likes to say, if you're willing to live as conservatively and suffer, so to speak, financially, like nobody else is willing to do, because you're willing to avoid and put off all of that joyful, playful stuff that costs extra money, that at some point when you get your budget right, you'll be able to live in that area of play and fun and joy in a way that other people never even dreamed of, because you'll have gotten it fixed right. But are you willing to pay the price now to have the stress-free enjoyment later? All right? Okay? Because, you know, think of it, I don't know if it's, maybe this is a good example. Think of it like when you were younger and you would go out and party and you came home and you thought you had a great time, but then you have the hangover. And then you're sicking up all over the place or whatever wild craziness that you did. And then you realize, well, it wasn't as fun as I thought it was. And maybe it wasn't worth all that. But then we're stupid, and we do this with our finances, and we forget, and the next week we do it all over again. Instead of remembering that it really wasn't worth what we thought was so fun. Well, the same thing when we go out and we say, oh, but it'd be fun to just go out and have a cup of coffee and then get some Danishes and maybe to go out and splurge and do this and go see some movies, at $15 a movie now or whatever it costs, and whatever it is that you're doing. Because, hey, I like the big screen better than looking at it on my little screen for half the price, and all of the family can watch for the same half price instead of all of us paying for one each ticket, to go out. So you got a family of 5 and you spend like $40 to go to the movies. Instead, you can own the movie for $10 and watch it on a smaller TV. And now you save $30, $40 and you can watch as many times as you want. Oh, but it's not the same. No, it's not. But you're where you are. Remember, we went back to that. Don't think you're someplace else. You are where you are in your financial, location, on the financial map. And where you are on that map decides what you can and can't afford to do right now. And of course, a lot of it has to do with where you want to end up, where you're going on the map. Because it's not like a map locator and you're not journeying somewhere. You're trying to journey into a place where you are hopefully stress-free in your finances. The shalom in your wallet, okay? You have peace in your finances. And you're in this class because you don't. And that's why even some people call their classes like financial peace, because that's what people want. They want peace. Okay? And we've done that course, and it's a good course because people do want peace. And so we're looking to have that same sort of result here, is that you can end up with peace. And once you have the peace, you can do. All right? I'm at a place now, okay, where because of years and years of getting this right, where I don't stress over people saying, hey, you want to go out tonight? We'll all go out to the little diner or whatever, we're going to go eat. And knowing that that's going to cost, for me and my family, easily $50, right? 4 people eating at a diner, easily $50. But I also know there was a lot of time in my life where I would have said, nope, we don't have $50. And I hated that. But I hated worse was that there was a time when we went and did it anyway. And it only kept making it worse. Until finally I said, well, let's fix this problem so that we can then eventually get to a place where we can go and it's not a stressor. Okay? And it's not destroying the budget. And it's not hurting car payments or paying bills or paying for food and shelter and normal things that you normally have to do, not the luxury things. Okay? And that's our goal. Okay? See, I'm going to say that wealth, by we'll call it the lowest level definition, is being financially shalom, peace. In other words, being where you're no longer stressed in your money. That's wealth, okay? That's not rich, that's wealth. Because rich has like a number to it. You can have wealth at almost any number. Depends on what kind of lifestyle you are comfortable living. Okay? But if you're comfortable living and you have peace in your finances, you have wealth. And that's what we're trying to get you to, is some wealth. All right? And so that's interesting because, wealth, you just change one letter and it's health. Like, so there's a thing that has to do with being healthy in your money. And I don't know why, it just hit me as I was saying it. I just picture that, to be healthy in your money, that's wealth. Okay? And it doesn't mean that you have to have brand new everything and big everything and own everything your heart ever thought about owning. It just means that you have peace. And that when you want to occasionally do something, you can, And that's wonderful when you can get to that place. And that you can tithe. And the tithe is, how great will it be when you can tithe and not think about how it might affect your ability to do the other things? It's just something that you just take right off the top and it doesn't even occur to you that it was ever yours. But until you fix the budgeting, a lot of you are going to have that problem, Remember when I did the tithing teaching, I taught that it's going to expose one of two things, either a greed problem because you just don't want to let go of your money, or a finance problem because you really just don't have enough to do it, because doing it's going to put you in a place where you're going to need benevolence. Okay, because you're bleeding. If you're bleeding, you cannot tithe. If you have less money than you need to pay basic standard, the basic bills, there's nothing to tithe. And so, this is going to be that joyful place of peace that I want you all to get to. That make sense? All right, any comments or questions? Because that's going to pretty much wrap it up for today's class. No? Okay, so what we have left to do, okay, is one more class. We'll talk a little bit about protecting finances and assets and retirement planning. We are not going to do it next week. My folks are going to be in town, and probably that's not going to be important for a little while. Matter of fact, I'm not even sure we'll do that until maybe the next round of classes, okay, when we start talking more about investment and that kind of thing. So this may be the last class, because this is really what you need. We can certainly talk more about it, but this is, for what we're trying to do in phase 1 of all this should basically complete it out. So we may or may not have another one, so if anybody's watching this, they'll know we may or may not have another one after this, and so you'll see. But this should give you everything you need to get to that place where there can finally be excess in your budget to then think about things like retirement and planning for the investing, all right? And that future planning. Amen? Amen, all right. Let's go at it. Massive amounts of action and do it.